Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Dark Matter episode 3. It's called The Box. So spoilers for the episode. Obviously I've had a shaky start with this show. I wasn't sure if I really wanted to continue with it, but I said I'll check out episode 2. And then episode 2 left me in a very similar place where I felt like, despite liking the concepts, it feels kind of samey to some other things, and I'm not sure I'm super into the characters and the way the story's progressing. So I said, I'll try episode 3. And here we are. And how do I feel? I think I'm done. I think I'm throwing in the towel. I think this is the end of the road for me with this show. And I think the real thing that got to me in this episode in particular was that the cliffhanger last time was, that the character, the sort of henchman lady that came in and killed, Doppel Daniela. And it kind of suggested, like, oh, like, how dark is this company and how they're willing to, like, kill people and so on. So I did immediately feel deflated in this episode that it seemed like everyone else was, like, in shock that she had done that. Like, everyone at the company, I mean. Like, no one else seemed to be, like, okay with the fact that she did that. Now, admittedly, I do think Vance, the guy in charge, maybe secretly did like want that to happen or was secretly okay with it and just was pretending to care like everyone else. But it did immediately deflate things a little bit for me in terms of, like, it just felt like, okay, everything that ending did feels like it feels like you're just kind of like pulling it back, like you're reining it back in too much. Where I feel like that doesn't have the impact that it did at the end of that episode. But the bigger thing for me is the progression of this episode, in which early on Jason starts to pretend that he believes them, that he is actually their Jason, and that he needs help and that he wants to remember. So he starts playing along and they start explaining to him that they've built this box and that he went in it and that, he's been gone for a year or whatever. And he went in, no one knows where he went. There's no recording equipment inside the box because they can't. And we see like security footage of him coming back out as well as going in. And it starts explaining some things and it's like, okay, like this isn't exactly where I was expecting it to go, but this is not a bad idea. The idea that he is playing along and pretending to be what they think he is, just so that he can learn how to work the box and possibly get back home. Right? That makes sense. I understand his motive, and one of the key complaints I had last episode is that it felt like he was just catching up with the audience the whole time. Here it feels like he's actively finding out new things that we also are finding out for the first time, and he has a goal. He has a clear goal, and we understand how he's trying to achieve that goal. Where it goes off the rails, though, is that he has a scene with Amanda, right? The love interest of Doppel Jason on this earth. And she's a psychiatrist, right? And she trains the people who are going to go into the box. And Jason gives this monologue about, what if, like, I'm, who these other people think I am. And he goes in this whole thing. And it gets really dramatic and focuses on her reaction. Like she's realizing something, like she's like actually shocked to realize maybe she's recognizing that this isn't her Jason finally. She's finally like kind of clicking, and she has this whole big like dramatic exit of the room and it's slow motion and she's going down the hall and all the rest of it. And this was fine. Like, I'm not saying this was where it went off rails. I did think it kind of jumped to this ultra dramatic moment without much of a real cause. I didn't really get what specifically triggered her to sort of have this realization. But, even let's just assume that I'll give it the benefit of the doubt and say that that's just on me. I thought, okay, potentially what's going to happen here is she's going to come back to him later when she's had time to think about this, and she's going to end up being this ally to him because she's going to be the only one who knows who he really is and maybe sympathize with him and maybe be a friend. Now, part of that's kind of true, and that by the end of the episode, she is his ally, so that's fair. But I thought that they were setting something up like that. I thought that was the point of this. And immediately, they come and like interrogate him, and they reveal that they spoke to Doppel Ryan, right? Ryan, who was at the meeting with Doppel Danielle and him last episode. He was there when he started talking about who he thinks he is. And all of a sudden, Vance, his hench lady, they all just like get, oh wait, you're an imposter, you're not our Jason, and they start interrogating him and beating him up and saying, how does the box work, what have you done with our Jason, so on and so on. And this was such a pivot to me for these characters to start acting like this, just purely because if you understood that your Jason was going into a box that could possibly let him go to other universes, and they do know that because Van says as much. He says, what if there's a world out there that's cured cancer and we can access it, right? So clearly the goal of this box is to get to other universes, to get to parallel Earths. That's the idea. Why did no one think for a second when Jason came out the box and he didn't know what you were talking about? Did no one even have the inclination, the idea to even suggest that maybe, just maybe, he's not your Jason? And instead, no one ever brings it up or talks about it. It's never suggested, at least on camera. And then all of a sudden, just because they've heard from someone else that he's actually said that he's another Jason from another Earth, now he's an imposter spy. Now he's someone who's got secrets to hide. And I found it frustrating that our Jason never says to them, hey, I'm the victim here. I don't know how I got here because your Jason's a psychopath and kidnapped me and put me in the box. I don't know how it works. All of this was infuriating to me. And it's not so much that, like, them second guessing him and thinking, oh, what if he's lying about being the victim? What if he's actually a spy and he's done something to our Jason? Like, I'm not against them having that thought. Like, I understand why they would have that idea at some point. But they just go immediately to that. And, like, it basically just boiled down to me that the progression of everything in this episode, I just didn't like. I didn't like how A got to B, how it got to C. Every single time it turned the dial to go to the next stage of the plot, I felt so unsatisfied with how we got there. Like, we were just jumping ahead without earning the excitement of where that next step was going. We never built up to certain things. And it made these characters at this company look like idiots. So ultimately Amanda comes and says to him, I'm going to get you out of here. And he's like, why? And it's basically because she feels guilty about Daniela being murdered and that she's not, like, morally comfortable with all the things Vance has done here. So she's going to get him out. And they try and get out, and when they're coming out of the elevator, Vance just walks past and sees them, and that's why they have to turn back. That felt a little bit just kind of, I don't know, like, contrived, I guess. But basically, it's like, where can we go? And she's like, the box. So they go to the box. So instead of it building up to him, like, finally, like, achieving what he set out to do and to get back in the box, it just kind of happens on this kind of spur of the moment thing at the end of episode 3. And they go in the box together, and he's like, wait, you're coming in with me? And she's like, well, yeah, they're shooting at me. Like, I basically need to get out of here now. So, the end of the episode is them waking up after being, like, in a nap for 3 minutes, which they have to do. It turns out the drug that he was given in episode 1 is, like, a key ingredient to making this work, is that your brain has to be, or at least parts of your brain have to be turned off to go into superposition and get to what appears to be visually an infinite hallway with doors, presumably all the doors leading out to a different universe. Now, how he knows which door leads to his universe that he came from is very tough to say. But clearly, Doppel Jason, who's taken his life, did have a way of knowing which door he was going through, because he was able to send this Jason back to his world. It's not like he sent him back to some third world or fourth world or fifth world. He sent him back to his world, which suggests to me that he intentionally sent him to his own world. I said the word world there a lot, but you know what I mean. I think, like, it's fine, right? So they're going to be universe hopping. They're going to see, because no doubt they're not going to go to the right universe, right? They're not going to go to the one he came from. They're going to go to some third one, and we'll maybe get more throughout the season. But I was so unsatisfied with every step of this journey throughout this episode that I knew, like, halfway through when all the turns were happening and he was being treated now like a prisoner, I just knew that, like, I'm done. Like, the concepts are cool and I like these concepts, but I've seen them done better. I've seen them done in a more interesting way. I just think the writing here is very unsatisfying. So, I mean, it feels weird to even bother talking about other stuff in the episode because I'm not going to continue and I don't really care where any of it leads. I guess it's slightly interesting that Doppel Jason, we see him really struggling this episode with knowing things that he's supposed to know. The wife's throwing a dinner party, and he's like trying to learn who all the guests are. He's trying to recall things like their names of their kids and what their jobs are, and he's like researching this stuff before the dinner party starts. Like, that's a fun enough idea. One of the more interesting little tidbits of it is that we find out the first person who went in the box was a woman named Blair that worked at the company. And it turns out that the Blair of this universe is the friend of Daniela, the one we saw in episode 1, the actress from Handmaid's Tale. And she is all nice to him. But it clearly matters to him that he's meeting a version of Blair. He's like, oh shit. It's not his Blair, of course. Obviously, we might bump into that version of Blair later in the show. Well, I say we. Not we, because I'm not going to. But you might if you keep watching. you might get more of it. Other than that, like, I mean, I guess, you know, the police were snooping around. There's a detective character that's introduced who's looking into the fact that all the people that went into the box have basically just disappeared. So they're missing persons. So the police care about that. And the fact that the first one was an employee of the company, and that, you know, obviously Jason was the latest. There was a couple of people, well, not latest, sorry, he was next, but the couple of people after him that went in the box did not work at the company. In fact, they were volunteers that had no connection to the company, and they started doing that because they knew it was going to look suspicious if employees of the company kept disappearing without a trace. So yeah, I found the character of Vance to be really frustrating in this episode. They set up a couple of character details which imply to me that they're going to show other versions of him, because they explain that his parents died when he was young and he was raised by his grandfather who built jet engines. That seems like a seed for something they're going to show in a different universe later. So that's fine, like, you know, whatever. But like, his like determination to find out how the box works and getting angry at Jason just was not particularly exciting to watch. I felt frustrated because this show inherently, the concept inherently has a lot of things that are very exciting to me in terms of what they could be focusing on. And I was getting into them last episode and talking about how, oh, let's explore how the characters are different in each world. And they kind of, you know, they do a little bit of that here. Daniela says to Doppel Jason that he's been better, basically, the last few days, that he's been, something's like a fire in him that's better, and like she's happier. And I was kind of pondering that idea of like that might happen, and what if the depressing situation happens where Jason comes back to his life, and even when she finds out what's happened, that she decides she prefers the new version of Jason and tells the original Jason to get lost. I don't know if that's where they're going with it. I have no idea, but like certainly there's interesting character things to explore. And sadly, I don't think the writing of these characters has made them interesting enough on their own to really get into them and get behind what they're doing. You know, the character of Amanda is another good example of like if they gave us a character here that was a bit more engaging, I could be very excited that she is maybe learning and understanding who this Jason is, and that she wants to help him could be seen as a very endearing part of her character. But everything's played so straight and serious, like a thriller, that it just, I don't know. I felt nothing. I felt nothing, and the progression of the plot in this episode was really annoyed me. So yeah, I mean, I think it's the right choice for me to not watch this anymore. I just, at a certain point, this type of show has to be something that I can sink my teeth into and talk about what these concepts do for me. And it feels like for 3 episodes now, I've been fighting with the writing of the show to try and get what I want out of it. And I think it's just become clear to me that after 3 episodes, I just don't think it's going to give me what I want from it. And, you know, that's not necessarily criminal, but yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it's work. I feel like if you've never seen a story like this before, if you've never seen any sort of alternate universe stories, this might do something for you. You might find it quite exciting because you don't necessarily know what half the things are going to be doing with it or coming, but I don't know. It wasn't working for me, so There you go. That's my thought. It's just a bit of a shorter review, but it's always kind of weird when I do like it. I'll do one more episode to see if I want to continue it, and then the answer is just a no. So it's like it feels pointless to dig into some of the smaller things quite as much. But I think I've explained why I didn't like this episode that much, and the fact that this is supposed to be the exciting lead-in to like the more universe-hopping stuff that they're clearly going to be doing. Yeah. So. If you enjoyed the review, it's always weird saying that when it's been a completely negative one, but if you enjoyed it, hit the like button, it helps out a bunch. You can, of course, go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support all the content over there. It helps out a lot if you do, keeps the lights on, and so on and so on. But that is me, so thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got Eddie Vanilla?